So let me ask you, is this the end for Donald Trump?
It's not the end, but it forecloses, one hopeful path. I think, I think there are basically two viable paths that we're going to get.
Let's do it. Okay, right. Texas. From CNBC, Texas sues 4 battleground states and Supreme Court over unlawful election results in 2020 presidential race. Texas Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton on Tuesday filed a lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court to invalidate presidential election results in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The lawsuit asserts that unlawful election results in those 4 states which President-elect Joe Biden won should be declared unconstitutional. The filing argues that those states use the coronavirus pandemic as an excuse to unlawfully change their election rules. Experts in election law were quick to dismiss the likelihood of the 9 Supreme Court justices taking the case. Now, I'm gonna poke your buttons a little bit and say Joe Biden is not the president-elect, but
that's fine.
But he's not, right?
Yeah, no, technically not. I mean,
no, literally not, but technically is. In order to be literally, to be...
Is this like a bugaboo of yours?
No. Well, no, because you tweeted that Joe Biden was president-elect, right?
No, I tweeted that Joe Biden won.
Okay, well, you said it earlier, so I'm just making the point to clarify for everybody what it means.
Okay.
President-elect is January 6th, when all the votes are counted and they say he will now be inaugurated, in 14 days or whatever, in 2 weeks. That's when he is president-elect officially because we go by the Electoral College. Technically, he is because everybody recognizes the projections from all the states, and thus it's going to happen anyway. So it's they consider it an inevitabilit, right? Okay, so let's talk about Texas.
Okay, let's talk about Texas.
All right. Is this Trump? He's guaranteed to win now. It's over. Trump won.
No. I mean, this is a very interesting thing. I had to learn. I read about it today because I was like, "Whoa!" I mean, this is something you remember from your con law class as a footnote. That, by the way, when states sue each other, they go straight to the Supreme Court. But it's not something that comes up very often. I think I looked into it. There's been an average of 1 case like this every year, per year for the last 100 years, and out of all the cases that the Supreme Court takes.
So states routinely sue other states for what?
The point is it's not routine. One case like this every year happens.
Oh, wow.
Out of 75 or 100 or 150 that the Supreme Court takes. So it's not. It happens, and it's usually designed for things like water rights.
Like Wisconsin and Illinois or something.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they have the Great Lakes Coalition though, so they're all pretty much in agreement. But it would be like I remember there was Arizona suing the Great Lakes, saying we deserve access to the water because it's on American soil or whatever. And
that was the original idea behind the Supreme Court was you had to have a place where the states could resolve their disputes.
What's this lawsuit about? What are they suing over?
So they're suing, and they're basically saying Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, et cetera, all didn't follow their own election laws, all made a mockery of election integrity. As a result, that injures us, the state of Texas, not just because our electors don't get to vote for president and it's canceled out by these illegitimate, unconstitutional votes, but also even more important from the state perspective in terms of its own interests, the vice presidency is now changed, and we're a state. We have a direct interest in our Senate representation and our ability to vote there, and the vice president is the president of the Senate who breaks ties.
Right.
So they're saying look, we have standing to object here. There are all these problems, and you should take this. And actually, we think you, the Supreme Court, don't have any discretion. We think you have to take this case. And then going through the litany of problems that we've been talking about elsewhere.
They said that SCOTUS has to take it.
They argued that. Doesn't look like it's a majority view on the Supreme Court. It looks like it's just Alito and Thomas, although we don't know how the 3 latest justices would rule on it. That said, I am doubtful, but not I don't think it's a guaranteed or anything, but I'm doubtful that the Supreme Court will take this case. And it kind of gets to the heart of, what does the Supreme Court normally do? It does appeals, right? Again, it sits as a court of review. When the case comes to it in the first instance, the Supreme Court's like, well, I guess we have to have a trial or something, right? We need to have evidence, we need to have witnesses. And how they actually do that is they literally just appoint basically a special master, which is like a private judge. And they're like, oh, I guess we have one of those cases we have to take. Well, here you go, private judge, go resolve it, and we'll deal with this later.
And then after everything's presented, they can rule on what.
Right. But because they're not equipped for it, they've kind of found ways to say okay, how do we not take these cases if we don't have to, right? We're an appeals court. We don't like to decide things in the first instance. How do we, let's narrow this down as much as possible. And so the way they do it now is they say, well, can the underlying interests of this case be vindicated in another lawsuit somewhere else? Okay, and if they can't, then fine, we'll take it. But if they can with other litigants in a forum so that things go normally and percolate their way up, then we'll do that. This is one of those cases where there are other forums where the underlying interests being talked about in the lawsuit can be vindicated. There are election contest laws in all these states which is actually one of the avenues we haven't really talked about, where I think there's a real chance of doing something and persuading a judge.
Well, so what is that?
Well, so for example, in Georgia, President Trump and David Schaefer, the director of Georgia Republicans, filed a formal election contests in Georgia state court under Georgia's election contest law.
When was that?
That was like 2 days ago.
Is that still going?
Yeah, that's still going. They just filed it. I think on the 5th or 6th.
But doesn't that play into safe harbor somehow? Like they've got to resolve that dispute?
I don't know how how it interplays with state harbor, but I just know that like it's the first lawsuit I saw where I was like, oh, there isn't an obvious procedural problem with this, right? That's going to prevent this from getting heard,
right?
Nice.
And that's going to lead to a judge just kicking it out of court, because that's been the problem with all the lawsuits so far. Like the other side gets up and says, oh, you have no standing and mootness, and like go down the list of like problems with your lawsuit that mean we don't even get to the substance.
Or some of them are just, I don't know, the Kraken lawsuits.
I mean, the Kraken lawsuits got dismissed yesterday. I mean, one of them got dismissed from the bench, which you never see.
Like that's how bad it was, or what?
Yeah, I mean, because normally, a district judge is worried about being reversed on appeal. It's
Right.
humiliating. It's your superiors telling you
Seems to happen all the
publicly-
time, though, right?
It does, but they want to avoid it because it's
Right, right,
humiliating, right. Like they don't like being reversed. It says they got the law wrong and they didn't do their job properly, and it's a public opinion. Like imagine getting a performance review and having it be in like a
And then
Federal
imagine being the
Register.
Supreme Court and you're just chilling because no one's going to challenge you.
No one can do that. That's why
Right.
all the judges want to be Supreme Court justices. But so they don't want, so as a result, if they don't want to be reversed, they try and put all their decisions in writing and make them pretty rigorous so that they survive appeal. Literally, the guy just looked at the Kraken plaintiffs and their lawyers and was like, you guys lose for like 4 reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4. You never could get into court. Even if you could, your claims are meritless. Go away. Like I haven't seen that in a serious piece of litigation in a long time.
I mean,
It was
wasn't
really
wasn't
bad.
the filing missing spacings between words?
Oh, there are typos all over the place.
But not
I hate
typos. Like there
in
were
legal
whole
filings.
paragraphs that had no spaces.
Oh,
Like between.
it was a mess. It was not proofread. And I mean,
What is this?
I mean, it's like I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it, because when I was practicing law, if I did that, I would have gotten fired.
So the reason I ask is I hear a lot. It's 4D chess. They're trying to lose on purpose to get to Supreme Court.
There's nothing good about losing.
Right.
You're going to go to the Supreme Court even if you win, because the other, like again, like say Sidney Powell wins her lawsuit at the district court level. You think the other side's going to be like, well, we're done here. I guess we're just leaving.
Yeah, they'd appeal and say no.
They'd appeal.
And it would make it's going there no matter what.
Right, and you'd like to have like an opinion that says you were right from the lower court, at least to like give you some presumption. Like
This
there's
is
no
how-
strategy to losing.
When they lost, when Trump's campaign lost, and I think the Third Circuit over,
Yeah.
I was basically saying, a bunch of people were like, "That's exactly what we wanted. Thanks for ruling so quickly, so we can get to SCOTUS." And I'm like, there is a good point to be made in that if they're going to win and they're still going to SCOTUS anyway, then they want to get there as fast as possible, right?
Right.
So that makes sense, sort of. But still, you'd rather win than lose, even if that was the case.
Right, and you don't want to lose the way they lost in the Third Circuit, which was again on all these procedural problems, like things like even if you won your point, you wouldn't have enough to change the result of the election based on the claims you're making. So you have to get out of court, or
Well, that was they wanted to amend the complaint a second time or whatever.
Oh yeah, gosh, the way they went about that was so silly. They wanted to amend the complaint a second time. They weren't actually appealing the underlying substantive ruling. They were appealing the decision by the district court not to let them fix their complaint. And that's granted liberally, because you want to basically
Right.
the idea is everybody should have access to justice, so they shouldn't be kicked out of court in a technicality. But the Trump campaign had been there saying, we have to get this done by November 23rd. We need to do it really fast because, the election certification law, we have to get it done fast. And then the district court dismisses their case and they're like, oh, well, can we fix the complaint and take another 6 weeks? And the district court's like, no.
Wow.
It's too late.
Yeah. And
So my question then is, and we'll go back to Texas and get to the heart of that lawsuit. Rudy Giuliani, is he a old crackpot, well past his prime, who's falling apart, or a mad, freaky genius playing 4D chess who's going to pull out a tremendous victory for Trump? It's only one or the other. There's no middle ground.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be mean to Rudy Giuliani, but he's doing like what many other people are doing. It's PR in the place of law. Like, I was really disappointed to see Giuliani being selected to argue the appeal. Giuliani's not an appellate lawyer. He hasn't practiced appellate law in years. He hasn't argued any appeals, as far as I know. I mean, it's possible I'm wrong about this, and he argued the appeal recently, but that's like a practice. Like, they were doing things like one of the things that in the Third Circuit case, people didn't miss this too. They appealed a temporary restraining order. That's actually wrong. You can't do that. You have to apply to the appellate court for an injunction pending appeal.
But how do
different.
you know this? They don't, and you're not even this kind of.
I didn't know this beforehand, but I read about it afterwards. Like,
shouldn't
after
they have read it before.
Yeah, exactly. This is why you hire experienced appellate lawyers, because they don't have to wait for the judge's opinion to find out what they should have done.
So,
they know in advance.
But you're a big Trump supporter.
Yeah.
You were mentioning this before the show, that we had a conversation a couple of years ago where I was like, it sounds like we agree on all of these, like, culture war kind of issues and stuff. And then I don't know if you asked me or I asked you or something, like you asked me then why wasn't I supporting Trump or something.
Yeah.
And then like I had some answers back in the day. I mean, back then it was like those are the Bolton stuff and the foreign policy failures and stuff. And that's kind of what, but the riots really changed things too. So now I'm like, you know what, man, everything else is kind of out the window. But so what you're saying is the best chance that Trump has right now to legitimately win as per some kind of constitutional process is martial law. Send in the troops, go in, just lock everybody up, arrest them all.
Is that really winning? I don't know. I don't want any coups. I think there's some possibility of the Texas lawsuit getting taken, and it's one virtue, if you will, is that it only has to get past this one big procedural hurdle, and then they can hear the case.
And what's that?
That's the Supreme Court deciding to grant permission for them to file the complaint.
So they haven't even filed the complaint yet.
Yeah, they've asked for permission to file it. And people are getting this wrong. They like see it on the docket. They're like, oh, SCOTUS has agreed to hear it. No, SCOTUS has, when they do that, they're saying, oh, you met the proper steps to ask for permission to file this complaint. That's all we're saying. Your filing was procedurally correct so far.
And then they decide if they want to hear it or not.
Yeah, they decide if they want to hear it or not. Odds are my answer is they probably won't. But if they get past that, if the SCOTUS decides on this one little decision, they're going to overlook how they've been doing things in the past.
And is it majority rule?
Yeah, it's a 5-4 decision.
Okay.
5-4 because you don't count Roberts?
No, Roberts is a lib.
Yes, I know.
He's a total lib. But even so, I think, if I'm a betting man, I'm not betting on the success of that litigation because in general, I mean, it's the problem we talked about earlier, that the interests underlying that they're trying to be vindicated there, right? Election irregularities, there's processes in the individual states to deal with it. And the Supreme Court generally hates having these original jurisdiction cases and only will take them if there's no other place it can be vindicated.
I don't know. Election betting odds has Trump up 0.7% today. Ooh. Considering the news, you'd think he'd be going down, but they still have him around 10% to win and be the next president.
That's free money. That's free money. That's what that is.
I don't know. I still wouldn't bet. I would take
I'm going to disclose something. Maybe I shouldn't. After I like all this nonsense with the one stuff, I looked on Predict It, and Predict It was giving me they said Trump was at 13% to win, and you can make a bet on based on that.
So Predict It has Trump at 14.
Oh wow, that's way too high.
Yeah, but you know what it is though.
Like
it's because you can buy them and then sell them when they go up. So when it's at 10 cents, people are like, I'll buy it because some news will come out, it'll go up to 12, and then I'll sell out.
Yeah.
And then make 2 cents.
Right.
I keep telling everybody, man, there's two big plays right here. If you really think Trump's got, 4D chess and the Kraken was only, was actually hiding and wasn't slain at all, you really think Trump's going to win? You bet you got to go and you got to place those bets, right?
Yeah, that's free
money. I
am
not advocating
the
for
other
gambling,
way, right?
Like
if you believe that 100% Trump's going to be in office in 2 months, that's absurd free money. You can make huge amounts of money.
You'll be rich. I saw one post on social media where someone claimed to have put like $20K into betting on Trump to win, and now they're panicking because it was like their life savings. But at the same time, I'll tell you this right here. You think that's true? It's free money?
Yeah, I mean.
Then why don't you bet on Biden? Right now, you can do it. I
already did.
You bet on Biden.
Yeah, I got like $4,000 riding on Biden.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sure there's a ton of people watching right now who are like, "Ooh, I hope he loses that money."
Well, there's sort of an ethical thing. Like, I think if you make predictions like this, you should bet on them.
That's a good point.
Betting is a tax on BS.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Should
make a video series like. When Luke comes out and he says something, I'll be like, okay, put the money down. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, I mean, it's a real test. Like, all the people who are saying that Trump's 100% going to be in office, why aren't they? I mean, there's huge amounts of money to be made on this bet.
I mean, you're going to make, what is that, 86 cents on the dollar?
No, I'm not going to make that much because I'm betting on Biden. So, like,
no, I'm saying like someone were to bet. You put down 14 cents for Trump, you win $1.
Yeah.
So put down $14 and win 100.
And I mean, the point being, like, not that I don't want Trump to win. I still do because I think it would be good for the country. But it's like, I've made public predictions that Trump will not win. And I feel like there's sort of an ethical obligation to be willing to put money on the public predictions I make.
Well, I'll tell you this. In 2018, I was like, I think the Republicans are gonna keep control, and they're gonna keep the House, maybe even gain in the House because all the culture war stuff was getting crazy. And turns out I was wrong. Mm-hmm. Actually, I was right. I was right for the first 2 days. And then about a week later, with all the mail-in ballots they started finding all over the place, then the Democrats ended up winning. So it's interesting how that happened, right?
Yeah.
So I was wrong. Then I said I thought Trump was going to win this one. I did say I'm very tepid most of the time, but I was saying for months leading up to the election, like I think Trump is going to win. That's my gut feeling, but Biden could win. Don't underestimate your opponent. So when it turns out that now the election is going Biden's way, and I'm saying Biden's got this, I'm probably wrong again. And now we're all going like, no. I've been saying over and over again ever since the 7th. It's 99.99%, for Biden. The reason I reserve that, actually earlier on I said it was like 97%.
Yeah.
This was before Trump actually filed the lawsuits, and I was like, so he has all of these ways to challenge these things. And then as he's, his campaign and other Republicans and pro-Trump individuals have been losing, I'm like, he of course still can.
Right.
But is it at a point where it's like winning the lottery 3 times in a row? Or just
it's just really unlikely. He has to win all these election contests. The time, we're running into the time constraints where the Electoral College is going to vote. I mean, even at the beginning, I said that the odds of him prevailing after the election results came in, like 5% at max.
Well, on January 6th, the members of Congress can contest, can dispute.
Right. I mean,
and it happens apparently relatively often, never works, and never goes anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, that's like what I would expect to happen here.
But isn't it true that what is it, Article 2, Section 1, or is it Section 2, Article 1 of the Constitution?
That sounds, if it's about Congress, it would be Article 1.
Constitution.
Oh, no, you're right. It's about the presidential election, so it's Article 2.
That it doesn't matter what the states say. The state legislatures always decide.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that absolute authority is placed in the state legislatures, but I don't think they're going to do anything to contradict the Electoral College. I mean, the precedent there is crazy. Like, if you think about it, the idea that the state elections don't matter and that
they don't.
I mean, in like.
This is the craziest thing. So I've been reading more and more about early U.S. history, and the founding fathers didn't want direct democracy. Like we all know that, and we've actually been sort of eroded in that direction for some time.
Yeah,
like the 17th Amendment, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
The Senate, meaning making the Senate elections direct elections.
Exactly. It used to be appointments by the state legislatures.
Right.
And so senators were. I think that system made more sense in a lot of ways. You know why?
Why?
We don't care about local elections anymore, and now our own communities fall apart and become detached and dejected.
Yeah, it's like our whole politics has been nationalized. Like, you can't run a local paper doing local politics section. That's a whole,
No one cares.
No one.
Yeah. And what's really irksome to me is when I see someone running for Congress talking about how if they get elected, they're going to do all the good things for our district. I'm like, you represent the district to the federal government. You don't clean up your district. You go to Congress and vote on national level policy.
Yeah, and here's a real interesting thing that the whole idea of representing your district, that basically went out the window with the ban of earmarks. That was the way they represented their district. They got a little money for like little pet projects. Now they don't even do that.
But the issue is, if you want your town cleaned up, you got to vote local.
Yeah.
And so before the 17th Amendment, for those unfamiliar, 17th Amendment says senators will be chosen by popular vote. Before that, the state legislatures would essentially vote. The problem was there was bribery or some kind of, just crony BS.
Yeah, no, that came out of like Teddy Roosevelt and all the good government stuff that they were doing in the early 1900s.
But think about it. If that's how the system still worked, then you'd be like, you gotta vote for, who's the PA state senator guy who's Mastriano, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be like, you gotta make sure he gets reelected because he's gonna make sure to get a good senator for us. Now it's like, I don't even know who that guy is, and I live in Pennsylvania, right? Not me personally, I'm just saying figuratively. Like, you've got people who live in PA who can't even name who's in their General Assembly. Don't know. Can you name? Well,
I just moved to Maryland, but I don't know. I don't even know who
I lived in New York for 5 years. I can't name a single person.
Yeah,
I can name Ocasio-Cortez. I didn't live in her district.
Yeah,
and she's federal level. I can't speak. I don't know who the councilmen are. I don't know who I don't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It has been, everything's being nationalized, and it's extremely dangerous. It's not just about politics, it's about media.
Yes.
Let's say this was talked about like a decade ago, as local media was dying off because the internet was replacing everything. This maybe this plays into the culture war in a lot of ways. It used to be that your tribe was partially local. Mm-hmm. What you cared about locally might be your high school football team versus the neighboring town or whatever. But with social media, the tribes became singular, national, top level, and like very specific.
Right.
If they used to write about with this phenomenon, you could have a local politician be extremely corrupt, and there's no one to write about it because no one cares. Do I care about I don't know, the mayor of Gainesville committing some crime or whatever? No, I care about DeSantis. I don't care about the smaller town mayor or whatever, or the city councilman. It's not going to make the news. No one's really going to care. Unless it's really crazy, like, he builds a flying machine and then starts dropping mortars on people or something.
I don't know. Maybe I have to think about it, though, because part of this is youth and, living wherever you want. I wonder if, we would change our minds if we were, well, I guess you are a homeowner, but like if I was, personally a homeowner in a place and knew I was going to stay there for 20 years, I might start caring a little more about local elections.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, your general point, though, is correct about how, our politics have been nationalized, our media has been nationalized, and the concerns people have are ultimate, and that also, I have a random thing, people would say to me, there's, and I think you might have said this, there's no way Joe Biden got 80 million some votes.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a way, for sure.
Right. And
people were, let's play the media game. Normies were radicalized by a psychotic Trump derangement media apparatus that sought to make money off of outrage about Trump. And it created a whirlpool that sucked in regular people who snapped and said, I just can't take it anymore. Biden, boom.
Yeah, no, I think that was exactly my thesis, right? Sports went away. What were people even focused on over the last year?
But I think Trump got Ocean's 11. That's the way I put it. Yeah. The real heist happened months ago when they were going around knocking on doors and saying vote, when they're doing ballot harvesting, when they were doing those illegal democracy in the park things in Wisconsin. There's the viral videos of the Native American women saying, we're going to give you money if you vote. Make sure you tell us you vote. One tribe actually said, send us a picture of you voting. We'll send you $20. Super illegal stuff.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt there were tons of shenanigans too. I remember, I was in Philly on election day.
You were posting those videos.
Yeah, the video of the poll watcher.
I referenced that when we had Destiny here. He's a leftist, and he said, if these claims of irregularity and fraud and stuff are the observers being blocked were true, then where were all the videos on election night? And I was like, Will Chamberlain was there, and he posted a video in the morning of an observer being kicked out.
Yeah,
it happened.
Yeah, that's weird. There were so many people who, just a random side note, so many people denied that. I saw fact checks that were
yeah,
there was BuzzFeed tried to fact check. I literally corrected her and she withdrew it, to her credit.
Yeah.
It's
so
she's
weird.
He wasn't, and then
they tried claiming that he was at the wrong precinct or whatever.
Right. It's
and then you posted the photo where it's good in any precinct or something.
Right, exactly.
So weird.
They were so tuned for there's misinformation. People are going to spread misinformation. I'm like, you guys know there's actual shenanigans going on in Philly. And I don't know that there was some massive plot to thwart poll watching. It's more that, what I would attribute this particular thing to was just sort of an arrogance among the poll workers in that area that they were kings of the castle. They dictated what happened. They didn't need to pay attention.
But they did you see the video where the guy yells, all Republican poll watchers leave now or whatever?
I didn't see that one, but
yeah. There's stuff like that. Or they're putting up boards to block the windows. Do you see what Scott Adams said about this?
What?
He said, if you are having a discussion about the potential irregularities or fraud after they barred observers and blocked windows, you're a victim of misinformation and essentially misdirection.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they said no witnesses, you can't do anything after that.
Right.
So when they say, where's the evidence of fraud? I don't know. They kicked out the observers and boarded the windows up.
Right. And I'm actually for as a general rule, the idea that if you wrongfully kick out poll watchers, then the votes go away. Right.
Yeah.
We assume you've committed fraud. The presumption is you committed fraud and you need to affirmatively prove you didn't. Right.
Yes.
That's, that's how it kind of works in the court system generally. If you fail to produce something in litigation, judges will eventually issue an adverse inference instruction saying, jury, you need to assume that this was terrible evidence for them that proved that they did something horrible.
Interesting.
And that's the way I should look at. I think we should look at. But we need to change the law to do this, right? But I think we should change the law about poll watchers and get people to a point where when they are instructed about working a poll and letting a poll watcher in, they're like, we better not restrict this poll watcher because the consequences of doing so are terrible.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.